went from a very underprivileged school in Hong Kong, China, to one of the top schools within the city, and that was like a really, really interesting transition for myself, and spoke a lot to how education is being invested, how scholarships, there's a lot of like loopholes in scholarship programs, and how lived experience is extremely important in kind of designing programs that would ensure that investments in education would target the most vulnerable populations and contribute to sustainable development. So Hong Kong is a city that has a Gini coefficient of 0.747, which is huge on economic disparity, obviously. So the SDG 10 of reducing inequalities, that definitely hits a point there, along with the SDG 4, obviously. There's been an increased effort from international schools to recruit kids from underprivileged backgrounds as a means of tackling both SDG 4 and 10, but sometimes well-meaning investments programs in the form of scholarships that target most vulnerable populations lack comprehensive programming that considers the unique recipients of scholarship funds. And personally, as that kid who transitioned herself without a lot of these programming, I faced significant social, cultural, and educational barriers in my own without any guidance from administration, peers, or teachers. So just speaking from a personal standpoint, the population was full of children of tycoons and elites from Hong Kong, and I personally found it really, really hard to fit into the social fabric. Consider the different types of languages that the upper class wielded, along with the very different social experience of getting into, having a private driver or going to a family friend's house in France, while my public school literally had kids who were living on $1 per day. That's crazy. And there was also a certain demeanor of hating the rich mindset that I picked up as a 13-year-old back in the day. Yeah, so in terms of the educational system as well, there's also a difference between public and private school education, where there's a huge emphasis on regurgitation and essentially becoming the next Google that caters also to the more Chinese way of learning as well, and transitioning from that system to a much more critically minded international baccalaureate kind of system that's very difficult, and just having the right guidance, teachers, and facilitating that transition is very important. So essentially what I did to ensure those loopholes were being filled, right? My principal actually picked me up as that one kid from the public school. I got sent to Hawaii, Barack Obama's high school, Punahou School, for a social change program, and that basically changed my life. Yeah, and so my high school was putting on a scholarship program for underprivileged students back then, and he asked me to speak at these information sessions. So based on these personal experiences, I actually volunteered to evaluate the scholarship policy and suggest additions to it from the angles of social, cultural adjustments, having counselors who understand the difficulties of transitioning in a new environment where everyone comes from a very different social, economic background. And also educational adjustment, which is having an orientation specifically kind of catering towards how the curriculum will change and how to personally approach and consult resources and teachers regarding those particularly different ways of learning, along with economic empowerment and to form stipends to allow the students to actually fit into those upper class settings. And so the scholarship policy was actually changed dramatically and drastically because of those recommendations, and that was pretty huge and fulfilling for someone who had lived experience